Sony released the a7R5, and although the R or resolution series is typically one that's designed for photographers, I think Sony may have actually just created the perfect hybrid camera for most people. So let's talk about it. So first and foremost, with this camera, you're getting a 61 megapixel backside illuminated sensor, which looks to be essentially the same as what the a7R4 offered. And this allows for shooting up to 10 frames per second in lossy compressed RAW, which again is matching up with the a7R4 specs. But where this camera looks to be somewhat similar to its predecessor, it is also extremely different, because this camera is now utilizing the Bion's XR processor and a completely new artificial intelligence chip that is getting used to enhance things like autofocus and white balance, among other things. And yes, when it comes to autofocus, the a7R5 seems to pretty much offer almost the kitchen sink when it comes to Sony autofocus technology. Now being able to predict human movement much better than it ever did before, particularly if subjects aren't directly facing the camera, being able to detect subjects beyond humans such as animals, birds, insects, yes, insects, planes, trains, automobiles, literally, plus all the other great enhancements you've come to know and expect from Sony autofocus, like spot focus, touch tracking, etc. Essentially everything that's been in Sony's latest cameras. Taking a lot of these new AI-fused enhancements with human pose estimation and white balance as well, and being able to take that with some of Sony's newer firmware updates in cameras like the a7 IV, like with different lossless compressed RAW file sizes, and you have a camera that not just shoots incredibly highly detailed 61 megapixel stills, but also 26 megapixel stills and 15 megapixel stills at medium and small file sizes respectively, and ultimately means you're getting a high-resolution photography powerhouse of a camera, which is pretty much what the R series has always been. But because Sony has been rolling so much into the video side of their cameras now for years, this camera is equally capable, if not perhaps even more so than many of their models on the video end. So yes, think through all the different features and enhancements you've seen on cameras like the a7S III, the FX3, and the a7 IV. 10-bit color and 422 chroma subsampling, up to 4K 60 frames per second, but now with, well, less of a crop in 4K 60 compared to the a7 IV, and 8K 24 frames per second, which no other camera other than the Sony a1 has. And yes, APS-C crop mode, of course, both in photo and video mode, up to 4K 30 frames per second, so you can get a lot of extra reach out of your different Sony lenses if and when you need to. S-Cinetone, of course, S-Log3, HLG, and all the other different picture profile options, XAVCS, XAVCHS, XAVCSI, and all the different Sony codec options for shooting the highest quality footage that you can, breathing compensation that works with many of Sony's G&G master lenses, anti-flicker shooting, and the new focus map feature, Sony's active steady shot mode that will let you go handheld convincingly and get good solid shots with this camera that now offers apparently up to 8 stops of IBIS performance compared to other models, full-size HDMI port, and yes, even 16-bit external RAW to recorders like the Atomos Ninja, so you can record ProRes RAW just like you can with the a7S III and FX3. And yes, in saying all of those different video specs, being able to do 4K 60p recording or even 8K 24p, at least based on some of the reviews that are out there now, without any major overheating limitations. So yes, take all those photo improvements, all of those different video enhancements we just talked about, and pair that with some other general niceties in the camera, like the 9.44 million dot electronic viewfinder that is also part of the a7S III and the a1, a brand new 3.2-inch 4-axis tilt/flip screen that pretty much orients itself in any configuration any photographer or videographer would want, dual UHS-2 and CF Express Type-A card slots, and yeah, take all of that into consideration and you are looking at almost the ultimate Sony alpha camera at this point, maybe except compared to one model. So is the a7R5 better than the a1? No. You're not going to get a 30 frames per second electronic shutter or blackout-free shooting experience like you can with a camera like the A1, or frankly even the Sony A9 series. These are just aimed at a different market in terms of a photographer or photography shooting situation, and even on the video side, of course, the A1 still does 4K 120p, which the a7R5 does not do, and will do up to 8K 30p, which the a7R5 also does not quite exactly hit. So yes, there still is a reason the flagship, being the A1, is still the flagship. But this flagship, of course, still costs around $6,500 US, and the a7R5 now retails for around $3,900 US at the time of recording this video. Quite frankly, you could get a Sony a7R5 and an a7 IV and still have $100 to spare compared to purchasing an A1. And though this isn't a quantity versus quality discussion, that might sort of beg the question, who is the a7R5 for? If you're someone that does, I would say, most photography scenarios, so say weddings, portraits, landscapes, real estate, most of the photography shooting scenarios that aren't exactly speed-oriented, say such as with action or sports shooting, this is clearly going to be the number one camera in Sony's lineup for that type of photography shooter for a number of years to come. But again, this camera really rolls in almost every single video feature from Sony's flagships also over the past few years. And so when you think about it, this camera contains all of the different video feature enhancements that the a7 IV does, and even many more that the a7S III, the FX3 do, or perhaps that they don't even have yet still, like breathing compensation, like the focus map feature, like the new video menus and video screen that is now kind of on Sony's cinema line cameras like the FX3 and FX30. So frankly, if you're someone that doesn't just shoot exclusively video, right, because in that case you might want something like an FX3 or FX30, this is a camera that's going to allow you to do video incredibly convincingly as well. Any hybrid shooter that's doing any sort of mix of photo and video work where you want to have an electronic viewfinder and sort of the best photography features to be able to handle the photo side of things, but you want an equally capable video camera that can shoot 4K 60 in elongated recording times, which the a7 IV can't quite do, but also a camera that can even shoot up to 8K 24p, that can do ProRes RAW externally, and that has all of the different picture profiles and other technical feature enhancements that Sony's video cameras have now featured over the past few years. The a7R5 is really more than just a photography camera, and though I wouldn't call it exclusively a video camera, it is now one of Sony's more compelling options in that side as well, which to me make it sort of the ultimate hybrid powerhouse. So should you purchase a Sony a7R5? That's a question I can't necessarily answer for you, but as I mentioned before, if you're someone that is one of the many types of photographers that would benefit from one of Sony's R-series cameras, and frankly, whether you're someone that shoots any mix of video, whether just a little bit for maybe casual use, to someone that is a true hybrid professional doing a mixture of video and photo, or frankly, even if you do more video than photo, which is still the case for me today, the a7R5 represents a really compelling option in Sony's lineup and might be a really good choice for you. So that might even beg the question, am I buying the Sony a7R5? The answer is yes. And though I'm someone that's benefited from being a video first shooter for a number of years now, I have noticed the tide turning more and more towards hybrid work, particularly in the past year of gigs. Yes, if you've watched my channel and any of the more recent content on here, whether that's some of the different shorts showing different gigs that I'm taking on, say with portraits or weddings, or my new real estate photography tutorial, which if you're looking to get into real estate, I would highly recommend it. The link to that will be above and in the description below. Definitely check that out. You will know that photo work is coming to encompass a large part of what I'm doing, and I'm seeing certainly folks starting to want and expect more of both worlds when it comes to different gigs and shooting situations. For me, having a camera that is only exclusively video oriented like the a7S III, though it ticks many of the boxes, its 12 megapixel sensor doesn't quite cut it for those photography gigs, and that means that's a camera I can't use in those situations. And while my a7 IV has become my true workhorse of this past year, there are still some limitations on the video side I encounter with that, like the inability to shoot 4K 60 frames per second continuously in camera. Not a true deal breaker in a lot of cases, but it means I have to sort of regulate or watch how I shoot video with that camera, which is something I don't really have to do with my a7S III. So there's always little compromises and trade-offs with each of these different camera bodies and types of shooting situations I find myself in. I think this a7R5 might finally represent a camera from me that will not be compromised on the photo side, but also will equally allow me to have sort of that latitude that I need for longer shooting on the video side as well, and shooting frame rates and resolutions like 4K 60. So yes, if you're wondering, the a7R5 will be in my lineup soon enough whenever that gets released, and you can certainly expect a fair amount of a7R5 content to come here on this channel. So definitely feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more Sony a7R5 content. Let me know in the comments below what you think, if you're thinking about purchasing an a7R5, or what you think about this camera release in relation to Sony's other models. And let me know if there's any specific content you'd like to see for when I finally get this camera, because I will be sure to try to cover it. It has been a very hectic few months here. This is probably the busiest wedding season and among other just general year for gigging with photography and videography that I've ever encountered. And that's a great thing. Of course, it means I've been a little busier and not able to deliver as much on the YouTube end. But we're about to enter sort of that holiday season time and of course get some new gear along the way. So I'm hoping to bring a lot more content to you in the near future, both about the a7R5 and frankly about a lot of other things. So definitely subscribe and stay tuned for that. For now, that is all I have to say. So thanks for watching.